this episode, I'll show you how I created HDR images for the Dragonfly Inn.
Adorama TV presents Exploring Photography with Mark Wallace.
Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Exploring Photography right here on Adorama TV. It's brought to you by Adorama. It's the camera store that has everything for photographers like you and me. Well, I'm hanging out here in Mindo, Ecuador with this giant. It's Ingo. He's my friend that I met here at the Dragonfly Inn. He actually owns the Dragonfly Inn. And when he found out that I was a photographer, he mentioned that he had a new website and he needed some photos. And I said, yeah, I'll take some photos for you. And so I wanted to talk to you about how those photos were made, because there were some definite challenges that I had to overcome, because I wanted to make sure Mr. Ingo here got the photos that he deserved. Well, before we talk about those photos, I want to tell you about the contest that Adorama have. They are awesome, and you can win some terrific prizes. So click the link right now and enter today. Well, this photo shoot was a blast, but there were definitely some challenges that I had to overcome. So let me walk through each of those one by one, and then we'll get into the solutions that I implemented. The first big challenge was the light. What we have right now is we have one source of light in this room. The lamps here are just too dim to illuminate the room for photography, and so that actually caused some dynamic range issues. You can't really see the source of light. It's a bunch of windows that are behind the camera that's shooting me right now, and so we have really bright light coming in but falling off quickly. That light is reflecting pretty brightly off the white sheets of the bed, but these walls are made of dark wood, and so they're absorbing the light, and so we have a dynamic range issue. The bed is about 2 to 3 stops brighter than the walls. And so we have to overcome that. The second thing is I didn't have really much time to shoot all the rooms in the hotel, and I knew I probably would make some mistakes in my metering and shooting. So I had to shoot in such a way that I could overcome those mistakes in post-production. And then the last thing I really needed to do was to really show off this room. Now I needed to do that to show all of the different features, and so I had to make sure I chose the right lens to make sure that people, when they saw the room online, saw how awesome it really was. So let's talk about the solutions that I implemented. Now, normally what I would do in a situation like this with light that's sort of difficult to work with is I'd bring in all my artificial light, my Profoto heads, and I would light this entire room artificially. But I am traveling really light, and so I don't even have a speed light, much less my Profoto gear. But what I do have is my Benro Travel Angel 2 tripod, and that's going to get me out of a bind because I can shoot a bracketed shot and create an HDR image. And so what I did is I set my tripod up in the corner of the room, and then I wanted to make sure I got a point of view that allowed me to shoot as much of the room as possible. So I'm raising my camera all the way as tall as this tripod will go. So this is about 5.5 feet. And then I chose a wide angle lens. This is a 16 to 35 millimeter f2.8 lens. And when I look through the lens, I can see pretty much wall to wall. So this wall all the way to this wall, it shows me the bed, all the windows behind. And so that is awesome. Now what I wanted to do is make sure that people could see the entire room in focus. And so I'm shooting at f11 in aperture priority mode. Now I don't need to shoot at f22 or some really small aperture like that to get everything in focus, because this is a really wide angle lens, and so I can fudge and shoot around f11. Also, it's a pretty dark room, so my ISO is at 800. I didn't want to kick it up any higher than that because I want to keep the noise at a minimum, and because I have a tripod, I can shoot some long exposures. And so what I've done is, to make sure I can overcome those dynamic range issues, I'm bracketing my shots. And so I'm going to shoot 5 shots, 2 that are underexposed, 2 that are overexposed, and 1 that's exposed correctly. And we'll put those all together later and create an HDR image. And so what I've done is I've set my drive mode to a 2-second delay. And if you've watched my HDR image and bracketing videos that I shot a few episodes ago, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen those, then you might want to watch those for a review. But I've set all of that up. Again, ISO 800 f11. I'm bracketing 5 shots. So I'm going to shoot these, and then we're going to hop over into our post-production, and I'll show you really quickly how I did the HDR image. So let me shoot, and we'll jump over there. Well, let's take a look at the 5 images I created specifically for this video. We have one shot that is exposed correctly, and you can see over here in Lightroom it says 0 EV exposure bias. In other words, this is the image that the camera thought was the correct exposure, and you can see all the issues we talked about before. We have a correctly exposed window, the bed looks okay at this edge, but as we come to the interior of the room, it's completely dark. Well, let's take a look at the rest of the bracketed shots, and I'll show you how I selected the ones that we're going to use for our HDR image. This is the first underexposed shot. This is underexposed by 3 1/3 stops. And what we have here, we have the outside is a little bit underexposed and the interior is totally unexposed. I'm not going to use this shot because what I'm really looking for are correctly exposed windows and a correctly exposed edge of the bed here. So if we go to the next bracketed shot, this one is underexposed by 1 2/3 stops. You can see that we have properly exposed windows. The bed looks like it's got a correct exposure here on the edge. That's the one I'm going to use. So I've already flagged that. We looked at our overexposed images. Here is the shot that's overexposed by 1 2/3 exposure, 1 2/3 stops. You can see here we've got details on this wall, but over here where we really need to have some image information, there really isn't any. So I'm going to choose this shot that shows all of the wood and all this stuff over here. Now we're going to have some issues way over here in the corner. You're going to see that we're going to see some noise show up here pretty clearly. But these are shot for the web, and so that's going to be acceptable. So if we go back to our grid view, you can see I've already selected these 3 shots. So I'll select those. And then what I'll do is I'll right-click, and I'm going to say Export Photomatix Pro. Now, Photomatix is an awesome piece of software, and I love it for creating HDR images. I covered this in a previous episode, so take a look at the links, and you'll see all this stuff. So I'm just going to go right through this. I'm going to export these, and these 3 images, by the way, were shot in RAW, are going to be merged in Photomatix, and we'll create our HDR image there. Okay, and with the magic of editing, here is our image that's being combined. We've got to do some things to this image. Now, one of the things I like about Photomatix is that there are some built-in presets. We've got the default preset, we've got some balanced presets. These sort of are taking all the settings and creating something that you can duplicate over and over. So this right here, this painterly look, it's not something I'm a fan of, this stuff. So what I did here when I was creating these images for Ingo is I went in and I edited these. I started with, I think it was a neutral setting here. Then I went in and I adjusted these settings here. Once I got those to the place that I liked, I created my own preset called Hotel Mindo. And this is my starting point now for all of the images that I created after that. And you can see over here, I don't know if this will show up, you can see the noise that I was talking about. This is sort of a loop view here. You can see that we've got a lot of noise over here in this corner. And so, you know, it's something we're just going to have to deal with when we're working with a light that we have in this situation. So a few things that I'll do here. One is I'm going to adjust the gamma. Think of the gamma as adjusting the midpoints, the midtones of the image, and that will adjust the contrast as well. So if I drag this to the left, you'll see that it's a little darker, more contrasty. If I drag this to the right, you'll see it's a little brighter and less contrasty. So I'm going to adjust that first so I've got a contrast that I like. It's sort of like this. And then I'm going to adjust the black point. If I pull that to the right, you'll see that the dark tones are more pronounced. I pull that to the left, and you'll see that the blacks are not quite as black. And then I'm going to also adjust the white point. I want this bed to be white, not gray. So if I pull that to the right, you'll see that the whites get whiter. If I pull that to the left, you'll see they get a little bit duller. So I'm going to pull that to the right until I see, just by looking, that I have a nice white bed. And I like that, so I'm going to save and re-import. Now remember, I'm just blasting through this. If you really want to see some information on HDR images, make sure you check out the tutorial I did on HDR images and bracketing in previous episodes of Exploring Photography. Okay, so our tone mapping is complete. I'm going to go right back over here into Lightroom, and you can see here is our finished photo. A couple of other things that I did to these images. I'll hop into the Develop module. I really want these to be crystal clear and nice and sharp, and so what I'll do here is I would normally go down to the sharpening and sharpen that by about 45 or 50, just so they're nice and clear. And as I mentioned before, here is all that noise that we knew was going to show up. We could do some noise reduction, but because this is for the web, when it's compressed and really small, that's not even going to show up. So we got a great picture. Let's take a look at our before and after. So this is what we would normally get with an exposed image right out of the camera. This is what we got making an HDR image. Now before we're done, I want to jump over into a different catalog, the actual catalog that I used for the shoot, and show you two more things that I did to help out these images. Well, here's the actual catalog of the images that I shot for the actual production. I want to show you a couple of things. The first is what the wide angle lens does for the image. If we take a look at this shot right here, this looks like a pretty large room, but in reality, the room is not so big. If you take a look at this bed, you can see it's pretty close to the wall. It takes up most of the room, but because of the distortion of that 16mm lens, it makes this room look spacious. If we go back here, you can see that all of these rooms sort of have that distortion to them where they look much larger than they actually are. It's one of those tricks of architectural photography. If you want to make your rooms look spacious, use a wider angle lens. Well, there are a couple other things I want to show you here. The first is a compositional trick. So if I take a look at two different shots, here is one shot of a room, and here is another shot. This is the exact same room, but look at the difference that a choice of lens placement makes. This shot right here shows the windows and the doors and the balcony and all the characteristics of the room. We see the bed and this old lamp. It looks terrific. When I move my camera over to this door over here and take a similar shot, you can see that this just looks, well, pretty dull. And the reason for that is about a third of the shot from this angle is this wall that art hasn't been hung on yet. And you can see that it looks sort of plain and drab. Even this room is pretty awesome. So just by moving the camera over, it minimizes this wall, and we see all the characteristics of the wood and the outside, and this is a much, much better choice of shot. So make sure you pay attention, and if you're not sure, take multiple angles of each shot. And there's one more thing that I had to do to some of these images. Here's a shot. I'm going to jump into the Develop module. Part of the problem with shooting in this environment is the wood is very, very orange. And so what we were getting here is, I'll kick out this here, and what I did is I created a couple snapshots. So this is the initial shot, and you can see that this is very, very orange, and I was able to fix that. You can see this is the after shot. I was able to take that orange out. The way that I did that was pretty simple. I just went down here to the saturation, and I changed this orange slider, so I'll show you the final again. And you can see that this orange slider is down by about -23. That just fixes all of that orange color cast that the wood creates. Now you're asking, why wouldn't I just fix this as a color temperature fix? Well, the problem is that color cast wasn't showing up on my white target here. And so the really easy quick fix was just to slide this orange slider down, and that fixed all of that. Well, that's how I created the picture for Ingo the Giant and his giant dogs here in Mindo, Ecuador. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to Adorama TV so you don't miss a single episode, and also check out the Adorama Learning Center where you see some of the stuff that I already talked about, specifically bracketing and creating HDR images. Well, thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you again next time. And thanks, Ingo.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Do you want great looking prints at low cost? Be sure to visit our easy to use online printing service. Adorama Pix has professionals who treat your images with the utmost care that you can count on. For a quick turnaround on photos, cards, or albums, use AdoramaPix.com.